revealing admission from the government. Health and Human Services had warned the Trump administration that separating kids from their families would be dangerous to the children. The president did it anyway. So he did it, knowing exactly what would happen. He also continues to tell his supporters that the free press is the enemy of the people. And as you can hear, the results are chilling. It's getting bad out there. Paul Manafort also back in court this morning after prosecutors kicked off their case for an alleged multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. We'll have the latest on that.
Boy, Andrea, I'll talk to you and Mike, who have been around a little bit through difficult times and covering difficult stories. Watching whether Donald Trump goes to the VFW and the press, he points at the press and he whips the crowds into a frenzy to boo at the press there, or whether he whips the crowd into a frenzy to boo and attack the free press in Tampa. I mean, this is not only part of his shtick, but come on, let's just say it. This is what autocrats do. This is what autocrats do, because they hate anybody that's fact-based and that holds them to power. People that don't want their power checked do exactly what Donald Trump does to the free press.
I've covered 7 American presidents in all these years, and none of them have liked the press. It's always been adversarial, there's been tensions, but they welcomed it and tolerated it, even during the worst of times. We went through impeachment, and Lord knows Bill Clinton did not love the press, but we've only had 3 White House press briefings during the entire month of July.
Yeah.
That is extraordinary.
And the quality of those briefings are limited.
And Mike Bornicle, it's not just Republicans that don't like the press. As Andrea said, Bill Clinton loathed the press. He really, Barack Obama had very little use for the press. Always thought they got it wrong. I mean, that's what presidents do. They, just like the Geico commercial, the guy scores the soccer goal, he's on his knees around the stadium. That's what they do. What presidents do is they hate the press. They can't stand the press. But they don't try to whip their audiences into a frenzy to hate the press and point fingers and do what Donald Trump's doing.
Well, I mean, he has effectively changed the culture around coverage of his presidency. And you saw it again vividly last night on display in Florida. We've seen it every time. And it has worked for him. And the upsetting factor is that you see the pictures on TV, specifically last night's pictures from Florida. And this is an administration and a president who has presided over effectively orphaning over 700 children today who don't know where their parents are. They are here in the United States because they were separated from their parents. The crowd obviously cares less about that than they do about haranguing the media.
Well, they also care less about the fact that Donald Trump is coordinating foreign policy with Vladimir Putin, an ex-KGB spy. It's a great distraction. Blame the press for all the things that you're doing.
Joe, to me, that is the ultimate mystery that you just touched upon, and it includes most of the members of the Republican Party in both the House and the Senate. How is it that we have had effectively war declared in the United States of America by Russia, war declared on us, carried out, an act of war carried out on us, and they seem not to care about that. That is a huge mystery.
You use the right word, though. It's a strategy. This isn't a reaction to the coverage of one story. This is a long, ongoing strategy from the beginning of his campaign to undermine the source, which is the media, so that anything negative you hear about him, you're not to believe, because consider the source. And I won't even go there this morning, but some of the pictures we saw last night, this does not end well.
No, it does not end well, and I think the publisher of the New York Times,
A.G. Salzberger,
put it right in his statement that this ends in violence.
Yes.
As he continues to whip people into a frenzy, and Donald Trump is doing it again because you don't look at what happened in Helsinki. You don't ask, if you're in this crowd, what did they say behind closed doors? You don't ask why he suddenly lifted sanctions against an oligarch that were put there for them meddling in American democracy. You don't ask why he shifted so abruptly on our position towards Iran. What went on in that meeting? I mean, that's what's so troubling about this. Is it is all a strategy, and it's just like Rudy Giuliani bumbling around on TV. They know now. More really, really bad news is coming that shows that Donald Trump lied about everything involving that meeting where they were conspiring with Russians. Not colluding. Let's just not use the word colluding. They were conspiring with the Russians. This is a conspiracy. So if no collusion, okay, no collusion. A conspiracy, a criminal conspiracy possibly. But he distracts the people in the crowd, calls it fake news, and hopes he can get away with crimes.
And because of what he said about the press and Bob Mueller, when those stories do come out, when those reports do come out, he will be able to say to those people, consider the source.
Yeah.
These are the people who have it out for us.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.